Prusa's catching fire, Sovel's with Grub Screws backing out, and oh, my Bambu saga continues. All this and more. PrintFixFriday, episode 90. We're 10 away. Let's get into it. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and if you're here for some Prusa fails and a massive rant on Bambu, you've come to the right place, so sit back, relax, and enjoy, because this one is going to be a little bit crazy. Toward the end of the video, I do talk about my experience so far with my Bambu Lab X1 Carbon, which is once again giving me nothing but problems. We are running a 0%, yes, 0% success rate for the last 2 weeks on this machine, and Bambu support has been less than helpful. But first, we have some other ones we got to talk about. So, if this is your kind of thing, enjoy, leave a like, and get subscribed. Let's get into it. Starting off the fails, we've got a couple of Prusa failures, actually. We've got the first one here where their Prusa Mark 3S, well, caught fire. Let's take a look and see what we're dealing with. We got a few photos here. We've got a E3D V6 here that has seen some better days on a Mark 3S that has melted, and they popped a fire extinguisher. So in a case like this, if your printer does catch fire, do this. Pop a fire extinguisher. It's going to ruin your printer. At this point, it's not worth trying to fix it. The ABC fire extinguisher media wreaks havoc on electronics. It's time to get rid of it. But let's see if we can try to figure out the key problem. Anybody figured it out yet? Because I looked at this and saw exactly what happened. Why is our heater not stuck inside of our heat block? Why is that? And we can see that it definitely got really hot right in this area. So we can see that the fan got damaged. Further on, we can see that over here with the V6, the heater's not even in the block anymore. It doesn't actually appear that the hot end itself caught fire. It looks like we actually hit some of the parts themselves, and that's what caused the fire. So apparently the user did recently replaced the heater cartridge a couple of weeks ago, and they saw some plastic leaking from the heat break. They remember tightening the heat block screw, but they must not have tightened it fully. That would lead to it coming loose and slapping around there. Nice catch. It's an easy fix, but when you get a bit of the white powder all over everything, and I'm not talking about the Florida snow, it is probably time to look at replacing a lot of parts. Most likely your motherboard is going to have problems. You can clean it. Man, this dust is a disaster to clean. Anyone that's ever had to clean up after popping a fire extinguisher knows it's not a lot of fun. It's actually why I have a hard time recommending the ABC fire extinguishers. While they do work really well, they make a huge mess and it is a massive problem to clean it up. While there are systems like the Wham Bam Cloud, which, by the way, code Musketeers 2022, yes, it's still Musketeers 2022, gets you some money off your order. So if that's your kind of thing, go head over to Wham Bam, get yourself some good stuff. The cloud would have done something here. But being an ABC media as well, it's going to make a bit of a mess. But hey, making a bit of a mess versus burning your house down, much, much easier for me to say, let's go ahead and get a cleaning crew in here. Because these are the reasons that we tell you guys not to leave your printers unattended. And if you are going to do maintenance on your printer, make sure that you check everything. If you replace a heater cartridge, which you wouldn't replace the heater cartridge if things were leaking, that would be looking at going and tightening up the nozzle to heat break. But fine. If you were going to replace the heater itself, you want to make sure that when the printer is at temp, that you can't wiggle it free. That wiggling can be a serious problem. And yes, there's been a cat in my lap the whole time. There she goes. You good? Okay, you're just gonna go back in my lap. So in a case like this, what do you have to do? I mean, you can look at cleaning everything up, but it's going to be a bit of a pain. And with Mark 3s going for relatively cheap on the secondhand market, part of me says it ain't worth the labor to clean this thing, and it's a lot easier just to replace it. And I get that not everyone can just toss money like that at a problem, but this is all because of what effectively amounted to bad maintenance. I would love to have these things never happen, but it is not an impossible thing where you forget to check that things are tight. If you don't try to wiggle that heater with a pair of pliers once it's at temperature to see, did it loosen up as things started to expand when they got warm, then yeah, you might run into a problem like this. Now, thankfully, the user was at home, so crisis averted as far as crises are concerned. But if you weren't at home, and you don't have a way to turn off your machine remotely, that's a huge problem. We've talked about it before on the channel, but I think it bears reiterating that having something like a Wise Cam and a smart plug to manually shut off power to a printer if you notice something is going awry when you're out is not a bad move to have. Turn off power for 10-15 seconds, then turn power back on so the printer can cool itself down normally with the fans, instead of it just baking with the hot end temperature moving directly into the heatsink. We don't want that. And yeah, okay, you've lost your print. You probably won't be able to recover it. That's a whole lot better than coming back to not having a house. Now, before all you insurance carriers look at me and say, oh my God, these things burn down houses. This is the fault of a user, not the fault of a machine. Just like when people modify cars, you can't really do anything about it. Same deal here. It's not the fault of the machine, it is the fault of the user. In a case like this, thankfully, outside of maybe a couple $100s worth of a machine and parts and labor, there's no significant damage. No, appears to be no structural damage, and it looks like they were printing inside of an enclosure, like one of those definitely not grow tents, and so everything seemed to be contained. So all's well that ends well, I guess. And before we get a bunch of haters saying, well, what about all the safety features in the Mark IIIs? They're there. This is one of those cases where the safety feature can't always detect it. If your heater is ever so slightly loose and wiggling its way out, the printer is likely not going to notice a thermal anomaly because it's going to happen slow enough to where it's not going to think that it's going into overcurrent. Same thing with overcurrent protection. If the machine draws too much current, it will shut itself down. The heater is not drawing too much current. It's drawing the amount of current that it's supposed to have. Now, I am curious as to why it didn't go into some level of thermal runaway. It likely was still enough in the heat block that the printer was maintaining a temperature, just not the temperature it was expecting. So if you had maybe a little bit of the heater still in the heat block, that was keeping the nozzle at probably around 215C, but then the rest of the heater was getting much hotter because thermal conductivity is a thing. So I don't know how we could look at solving this problem, and I'm not entirely certain if it is on Prusa or other manufacturers to deal with what effectively amounts to a user modifying and then screwing up their machine. Prusa has kind of solved most of these problems already. It would be really cool if we had something to detect that the heaters were staying on too long. While we were maintaining temperature, the average known PID values and the values for what the printer expects isn't there. Now, this would require the printer to log its temperatures and pull from some sort of a database or a known database that it can be downloaded to. If something is outside of that, it can trigger that thermal anomaly, but that might be a lot for the Mark IIIS's little bitty 8-bit board. So then where does this leave us? I don't have the best solution to keep this from happening to other people other than if you are going to be changing out your heater, make sure that you really screw it in. The V6 blocks need a lot more pressure than you think, and I have unfortunately stripped out a block or two in my day, really trying to torque it down. If you are unsure, and I doubt this is E3D recommended, but it's worked for me, so grain of salt what I'm about to say next. We will do it with a pair of pliers, a pair of channel locks to squeeze the block together as we then tighten the bolt for the heater. It's a little jank, but it works. And that means it's not jank. So, my heater block melted. I'm melting! Another Prusa failure. See, it's not all me yelling about Bambu, but if you're looking for that, don't worry. We're gonna get to that toward the end of the video. We've got an E3D V6 here that, yeah, that's not the right nozzle. That's aluminium, and the whole thing has got a bit of the fuzzy skin. So I've seen this a couple of times. In fact, a buddy of the channel, Alan, or Pooch from Repcord, as a lot of people know him, had this problem too. We were all kind of wondering, is it bad metal using the heat blocks? What could it be? Well, support got back to this person. This is the value of Prusa support, why their machines are so expensive. Literally, I'd contact Prusa support, the highest comment in there, because it is very wrong. Something is wrong with this printer. And, you know, there were people thinking that maybe it was thermal runaway. The individual contacted them via live chat. They said it can happen if a thermistor is faulty, which is most likely the case here. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. If your thermistor is reading a bad value for some reason, let's say instead of the expected, it's reading much lower, the printer's not going to know the difference because, again, we rely on certain things. A thermistor changes its resistance based on heat, and we can calculate what the temperature is. Well, if that thermistor was damaged in manufacturing for some reason and has a different resistance value than expected, you can run into problems like this. And I love that there are some great answers here. We're going to link to this one down in the description. And if you do want to really read into how the firmware works, these, I'm not certain if they're Prusa staff members or not, but I think they do a great job of really talking through why certain steps in the firmware, like the thermal anomaly, would not have triggered here. Because as far as the machine is concerned, it doesn't know any better. It is one of those odd things that you can have as many thermistors as backup safeties as you want, but eventually they all could fail at the same time. This isn't the first time I've seen it, and the best thing to do is contact Prusa support. They're going to take care of this person just like they always do. It's the thing that you spend money on when you buy a Prusa is the support. They ain't the fastest printers, they ain't the prettiest, and they certainly are not the most affordable, but damn it if they just don't work. Looking further, we have some really interesting facts here. Aluminium melts at around 660 degrees centigrade, otherwise known as really effing hot. And that thing definitely got close to the melting temp, if not all the way there. Now, it is some sort of alloy of aluminum. It's not going to be pure, because pure, I'm told, it doesn't really mill very well, but it is absolutely something to be aware of. So if you do find yourself in a case where your hot end's got a bit of the runs, just like this, you gotta contact the manufacturer. You would first want to start with the company you bought the printer from, but in a case like this, going to E3D would not be a bad issue either, right? They're the ones that manufacture the hot end for Prusa research, of course, but it is a V6, and that means that E3D should know as well. Previously, I know that Prusa has asked for the printers back so they can do some testing. Obviously, they found that, yeah, it's a thermistor issue, so I'm glad it didn't turn into what happened in the previous failure and a new thermistor and heat block, and honestly just replace the whole hot end at that point will solve your problem. It's not that big of a deal, but I can certainly understand coming back to seeing that from your printer and wondering what the heck. Next up, another fail from editor Andrew. I think that gives him 3 in a row. He has a Solval SV06 that is once again giving him some problems. He's having issues with his extruder gears. We got a bit of a video here. So we can see that the entire extruder gear is just spinning freely on the motor shaft. What is this? What's going on here? We've got a set of gears here. Those are your hob gears that drive your filament through the path. On the SV06, it is a planetary system, and we can see that in this original video. We have our little planets here around the sun. But the inside gear, this one, the one with the teeth on it, is spinning freely. We can see pretty clearly that the grub screws are fully out. They're not touching anything anymore. But even further, we can see where the grub screw has loosened up and actually put some marking on the machine itself. Now, I was telling Andrew, hey, do you see a D on the shaft? And he does. We've got a flat spot on the shaft. But interestingly, there is a shaft pressed onto the shaft. So we've got a D there and then another flat spot there. Where we were telling Andrew to tighten everything wasn't actually the right spot. So Solval, why? Why is it like that? Anyways, in this particular case, it is, hey, just go ahead and tighten your grub screws back on the flat spot on the shaft. If you are having a hard time figuring out where the actual flat spot is, hold onto the shaft of the motor and then spin the gear a little bit as you tighten it. That will kind of wiggle it into the middle as you tighten everything down, and that will enable you to lock in that extruder gear with a grub screw. In a case like this, if it does come loose often, a little bit of blue Loctite can go a long way, but I would look at something else creating some sort of friction or back pressure in the machine itself, because something there isn't right, especially if it happens over and over again. So last week we had our first Creality K1 failure, which was brought to us by the real Sam Prentice, a good friend of the channel, where he retweeted somebody's failure. But one of our own in our Patreon Discord actually ended up getting a Creality K1. And it's not going great. Now, first off, I'd like to point out this is OMG Frankies. I am going to find you, sir, because putting a Prusa build plate on a Creality machine should be punishable, and I think that's why your machine is mad at you. But, you know, I'm going to ignore that for right now, because we have a K1 that's getting some problems, and what is really the big problem here is not this. We're going to talk about that. Stay with me here. Let's first look at what's going on. We have a machine making a lot of noise, and even for a regular 3D printer, that's a lot of noise. But if you notice, it sounds like the fan is hitting something. Let's see what that looks like. So he's got the front cover off, and as he tightened up, I would like to point out that OMG Frankie is doing a great job of getting that and doing a really, really slow turn on that hex key. So props to you. This is QA and QC. This is a printer that should not have made it out of the factory because something is obviously wrong. And while it's not that big of an issue to fix, just loosen up a screw a little bit so the fan's not hitting nothing anymore. The real problem is that he can't get a hold of Creality. They're not replying to emails, DMs on social media, or anything. Creality is not returning any of his reach outs. That is the real problem here. Solving the issue is apparently not too bad. But if you do have a K1, it seems like it's a little difficult to get access to Creality to get help. And look, we've talked about this. At a certain price point, don't expect any help. But the K1 is not at a price point where I don't expect you to get any help. In fact, I expect you to get pretty good help at a $700 price budget. I think they're around 700 bucks. This kind of QA and QC issue worries me a lot because this is a day one issue with the machine. And while this could easily be solved by some sort of shipping issue, Creality should have this stuff down by now because they're not new to this. I can give Bambu some sort of a pass because they've never made a 3D printer before. I'm not going to give Creality one. They need to get this together and get that solved because that's not okay. This is not a user error. This is not someone that has upgraded their printer and created a problem. This is someone who is just trying to use their 3D printer and can't because it's creating problems like this. And thankfully, they have enough wits about them to look at trying to solve the problem themselves. But at this price point, they shouldn't have to. If you are dealing with Creality K1 issues, let me know if you have had decent requests and access to Creality. This is not the first person to tell me that Creality is really hard to get a hold of, and they're certainly one of the smaller cases that we've seen of an issue. This is not a printer crippling issue. This is just an annoying issue because I'm sorry. If that's what my printer sounded like all the time, I would proper hate it. What's the solution here? If Creality's not getting back to you and they're not helping you out at all, you really are kind of down to the only option, which is looking for your money back. You can start the return process, request an RMA, and if they still don't respond to you, you got to go to that credit card company and do a chargeback. It's a last-ditch resort, and you shouldn't use it very lightly because chargebacks are very detrimental to the company and can get you blacklisted from doing business with the company ever again. But if your hands are tied and you have all this money sitting there doing nothing for you, I don't blame you for wanting to do it. I would give Creality 2 to 3 days max to respond. And you have to understand that them being in mainland China means that, at least for me here in the United States, they don't wake up till about 10 or 11 o'clock at night for me. They're normally not starting their day until midnight or 1 a.m., which is okay, not that big of a deal. We could stay up late a couple of nights, but if they're not returning your communications at all, that's a much bigger problem than just some noise in your printer, because that sounds like that's going to be something that you'll have to fight with for the rest of the ownership. And I can tell you, that's not something that you want. I'm going to preface this with that this is going to be ranty. And I feel like all of you know this by now, but I'm going to get angry here. I'm going to do my best to keep my cool, but understand I'm really upset about this. I am continuing to have issues with my Bambu Lab X1 Carbon. This is printer number 2. If you don't remember, my first one was an absolute lemon that dealt with so many issues. We'll card to that video so you guys can take a look. I put out a tweet. I say that it is a commonplace, it seems, for my Bambu X1 Carbon, disassembled, fixing issues that should never be an issue to begin with, can't get past the first layer, attempt and fail number 10 for the day. That's right. My printer is now up to 19, I think 19 or 20 jobs with 0 successes without some sort of manual intervention. That is not okay. You guys can see what's going on. We got some ABS. It ain't getting past the first layer. We can see real bad. And so I do what I do. Since I couldn't get the filament out, it's most likely in the extruder, but hey, let's clear the hot end just to be safe. We go ahead and push all the old filament out once the hot end is hot, and then we look at doing a couple of cold pulls. I use white ABS or white polycarbonate for that, so if there is any goo that's inside of the hot end that shouldn't be there, we can get it out. Upon removing the extruder, and it's gonna be hard to see, we've got some filament chewed up in the gears. But beyond that, we also have some rust on the gears. This printer has been used for 344 hours prior to all the testing that I am now doing for Bambu, for reasons that I don't believe are valid, but we'll get to that in a bit. There is no reason that there should be that much rust. I've got plenty of bare metal in this room that has no rust on it at all. Metal that's been in here for years. To see that my printer that is not even 6 months old already has rust in its extruder is a bit concerning to me, because rust tends to travel, and that can definitely travel into your filament, considering what this gear is attached to is the actual hobbed gear for your extruder. So, okay, fine. I get the crappy material out, we move on. I change to a brand new roll of ABS from a different manufacturer. We go to 3DX Tech ABS, and one more time, same problem. It clogs on the first layer. How does Bambu respond? I would first recommend cleaning the plate to ensure good adhesion. I don't know about the rest of you, but this is not a build plate adhesion issue. Bambu, I have on multiple times, hell, in the current open ticket that I have with you all, offered my assistance to help you not just train your people, but to better understand where your machines go wrong. You can either choose to accept my olive branch or continue to piss me off. I don't particularly care. We gotta get a handle on these machines because I'm not the only one dealing with it. I'm just the one with the loudest mouth. It's not a bed adhesion issue. Bambu says we'd first recommend cleaning your plate. I clean my plate every single print. Bed adhesion is not a problem that we have out here. We know how to keep our build plates clean. We know how to use them. And because I've been printing for 15 years, I know beyond a reasonable doubt that it is not the build plate. It's not adhesion related. But fine, I'll give in. Let's have some fun. Bambu responds says, I understand that it might not look like it, but following our customer support recommendation can help solve the problem. Please open a support ticket as mentioned and we'll assist. I did that yesterday, and they are still on the fact that it's the build plate. So what did Grant do? Well, Grant went ahead and did it with their build plate. This is the engineering plate from Bambu, and you can see the mess that's down here because this printer doesn't work. It not only started to under extrude and cause problems, but the parts warped so badly on the engineering plate. And yes, I applied glue as per Bambu's instructions. And the fact that you have to apply glue to a plate to promote adhesion is bad. You should never have to do that. If your plates require glue for adhesion, it's time to move over to a real plate, like a Wham Bam Pex plate, a plate that I've never had adhesion issues with. In fact, it's quite the opposite. I often can't get the parts off the damn build plate, versus this engineering plate, which, to its credit, when it cooled down, everything popped off. But it also popped off when it was hot. Let's go to my tickets together. Here we go. Here's my current open ticket. The plate that you had shared before has scuffs which impact the measurement. As I said before, please post a few photos so I can understand its condition better. And before, Bambu was telling me the aftermarket plate being semi-translucent could lead to problems with the LiDAR, because I brought up my previous issue with the LiDAR not working properly. And they're gonna blame it on my build plate. So, fine. I'll change the build plate. Still didn't work. Next question. They're going off onto a tangent of a build plate when I don't have an adhesion problem. I don't even have an issue with the LiDAR. I had one issue with the LiDAR, and I was more than willing to move past it. I wanted to talk about it inside of PrintFixFriday, and that was it. I moved past it. I know what to look for. I don't want to have to go check out my $1,600 printer printing, because all my other printers at $800 and above don't need my babying of them constantly. But fine, I'll concede a little bit. And Bambu says, yes, we were saying the printer works out of the box, but with the default configuration and setup, meaning that you should use the engineering plate in this case, not an aftermarket plate, which of course can work in some situations, but right now we believe this is the main issue. Bambu, from the bottom of my heart, bless your heart, it's not the build plate. And they're telling me that the bed print surface is quite dirty and not uniform. No, it's scuffed. But again, it's got nothing to do with the bed. Nothing. Zero. Zilch. Nada to do with the bed. I told them I use stock settings. I use stock settings. I use stock settings. Depending on the settings used in the slicer, I use stock settings. That's all I've done. I've used stock settings. And in fact, there's my original thing. I have included materials that I've tried. ABS from Xylotech, 3DX Tech, Polymaker, and a few generics. And I have had no success. Literally running 0% success in the past week. That is unacceptable. And then to see that support is more or less mocking me and not dealing with the problem at hand is a real issue. And see, Bambu says, as mentioned, if you don't share a log file, it's not possible for us to check the bed leveling data as we do not have access to it in other ways. Good. See, because again, as I've talked about prior, Bambu will not and should not get any of your log files and will never get any of mine until they release their encryption. Bambu encrypts their log files, and they're sending a lot of data. In fact, I asked Dr. Tao during a podcast about this, not my podcast, somebody else's. I was told that no, we are not going to release it because there is proprietary information in it. Well, then I'm not going to release my log file to you because there could be proprietary information in it and you're hiding it from me. This could be a witch hunt for all I know. Once we can crack it, and oh yeah, by the way, $500 bounty to the first person that can crack it. And I know, it's not a lot of money. It's what I got, guys. But even further, I can't update my machine's firmware because, oh yeah, it requires you to be connected to the internet to do that. We have a facility that is secure. We do not allow printers on the network. It is not allowed, period. Especially when those machines talk back to China. And I understand that for you regular viewers and users, that might not be a thing. But if you are running a business with Bambu Lab printers, printing parts with NDAs, or God forbid ITAR, you better shut that shit down fast because you don't know what Bambu is pulling from your machines. And sure, they have a privacy policy, but a company with a privacy policy that just says to trust us, bro, is not one that I trust. So before you tell me to update my firmware, because I'm betting that's coming next, no. Not until you let me do it with an SD card or via USB, like every other printer on the market. And before you call me someone who's just complaining and making all this bullshit up, I'm not. And if you were a part of our Patreon Discord, you'd know, because you often get to see me hanging out with the rest of the Musketeers and the Bambu failing, and I have to get up and go to it. I am running out of patience for this company and for these machines. I have offered so many times to assist, and Bambu just glosses over it. And while I'm glad that I'm getting somewhat better response times, you guys are welcome to look at the time records here. Bambu is getting back to me relatively quickly, and I'm told that this is not consistent. I'm mad, but I'm just more disappointed. I'm disappointed that I trusted a company that had had some time to learn and get their wits about them with $1,600 of my money. I have a paperweight. I don't like this machine, and I want it fixed. And if Bambu continues to go down this path of a bed, I'm gonna just request another machine. I will say to this user, Guy Hollinshead, he sent a file via printables for a scoop that fits underneath the machine so that you can easily get the crap out from the bottom of the machine. A+, great model, highly recommended. For those of you that own Bambus, print that out and put it down there because you're gonna end up with a bunch of crap on the bottom of your Bambu. From the date of release of this PrintFixFriday, I will have had my machine for a hair under 5 months. And not this one, just Bambus in general. And I am running a sub 10% overall success rate on these machines. I have multiple times described my problem and said it's not a bed issue. We don't have an adhesion issue. Maybe they think the heat bed is going nuclear and it's getting too hot. It's not. Because if it was, prints like this, which were done all on the Bambu, would have melted. This is PLA. Every single one of these pieces had multiple times where I had to go and unclog the machine and deal with it. It is a monumental pain in the ass. And in fact, I believe it's on the Bowser head that you can see in the time lapse that we did of it, that the lighting inside the machine changes because the machine sat overnight waiting for me to come and fix it. And while, yeah, when it works, it makes beautiful parts, I can't risk and put my name behind any of you having an experience anywhere near like mine has been. I'd like your guys' opinions down in those comments below because I have no clue what to do. As a content creator, I feel like I need to continue to flex my muscles and become a problem, but it doesn't solve my problem. In fact, it just makes the fanboys hate me more. This is my experience, and those of you that are having a good experience, I'm happy for you. I hope that one day I can get there, but I'm not. My world is that I have a $1,600 boat anchor. It would be better as a boat anchor than as a 3D printer. I am all but giving up hope. Hell, I've even asked Sam Prentice to whisper sweet nothings into this machine's little ears. I don't know. I think it has ears because when it hears me talk, it likes to fail. And even that couldn't fix it. I am at my wit's end with this machine and with this company. I know that I'm not alone, but I know that I am a minority in all of this. Now, it's just unfortunate that it's somebody with a voice like mine. I've emailed Bambu. I have contacts at Bambu. Nobody's returned my emails. I have experience to be able to help. I can help them build a team. I can help them train their team. I can help them fix the printer problems. Hell, I have some ideas as to what's actually going on with my machine. But if Bambu doesn't want my help, then fine. I don't know what else I'm supposed to do. Let me know down in those comments below what you guys think. That's all we got. I know. To give you guys an idea, I am over an hour into the raw recording, but I know like better part of half of it is my Bambu rant. So we will actually be releasing that full rant to our Patreon members. So if that's your kind of thing, go subscribe to our Patreon, YouTube channel members, as well as PayPal, which gets you into our Discord as well. You can get into Discord on those other platforms too. Don't worry. That's all I got for you guys today on this one, though. Stay safe out there. Don't forget to call your loved ones. And as always, keep making awesome. Have a good one. Hey, thanks so much for watching this video, and a massive thank you out to all of our Patreon, PayPal, and YouTube channel member supporters whose names are listed right next to me at the $5 tier and higher. Remember, if you want to kick a couple of bucks into that creator fund, links are in that description down below. Right below me will be the entire PrintFixFriday series, so you can take a look and see what it's all about. Right next to that will be my 1 month update with my Bambu X1 Carbon, my first one. It wasn't great, but you'll probably enjoy it if you enjoyed this video. Click it. You'll enjoy it. See you all down in those comments. Oh boy, it's going to be fun. And in the next one, take care.